We won a game. We finally won a game. The LA Clippers finally break their 5-game losing streak, and it came in dramatic fashion in a huge comeback win over the short-handed Memphis Grizzlies. Is this the potential win that can turn around the season? Or should I say this is the win that could potentially turn around the season? Or is it just papering over the cracks and going to prevent needed change? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, in my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod or subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for more Clipper content. A video of the game will be out, and it was a great atmosphere. The crowd, absolutely one of the biggest reasons the Clippers finally broke the streak. Awesome atmosphere at the Staples Center last night. And, of course, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Clippers on YouTube. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. But if you want to see the visual version, which a lot of people prefer, you got to subscribe on YouTube and hit the notification bell and let me know. Is this a win that could potentially turn around the Clippers season, or do you think it was just a win that's papering over the cracks? Going to be talking about why I believe either side could be right, and should I say the angles of either side, and then just the overall big picture, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I heard about something within the locker room that I talked about last episode, and we did not see it come to fruition in this one, and that didn't make me look good. But then again, there was an LA Times article about it, about Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, that whole deal, so we'll talk about that. But let's get right into the game. Grizzlies coming to town extremely short-handed without Ja Morant, who's out with the suspension. Dillon Brooks out with technical foul accumulation. Brandon Clarke out for the season. And Steven Adams. So you have a very key bench player and 3 starters out. Absolutely no excuse for the Clippers not to win. And in the first quarter, I thought Paul George and Kawhi Leonard set a nice tone. But what shocked me right out the gate was that Marcus Morris continued to start. Before the game started, Ty Lue said he wasn't going to reveal his starters, and I figured we were maybe in for a surprise. And mind you, Ivica Zubac's back in the lineup, but didn't play that much, was still on a minutes restriction. He only played 18 minutes. Mason Plumlee played 21. So I can't wait till Zoo's off that minutes restriction, because the Clippers desperately need his interior defense, because defense was a problem right away. And especially when you're starting with Marcus Morris, as I've said, you are already putting yourself in a potential hole, because he's not one of the players that should be starting on this team. But I did hear that, I talked about last episode that Marcus Morris was potentially going to have his minutes reduced. There was an article from the LA Times about that, and that Robert Covington could see an increase. And especially coming off the game that Rocco had against Sacramento. But the fact that he was out yet again, or he was DNP'd yet again, just shows that either someone's lying or the urgency to make that change wasn't quite there just yet. And Marcus Morris, from what I've been told and confirmed from someone within the organization, that he was not a happy camper about the Clippers potentially reducing his minutes, and went Reggie Jackson on him, started acting differently, so Ty Lue gave him another chance. But then again, that goes to show the sacrifice needed to win a championship, and we are acquiescing to Marcus Morris. Now, I understand you want him to stay connected. He's a loyal member of this team for the last 3.5 years, it's going to be 3.5 years after this season's over. But we can't be just accommodating role players like this when we're trying to win a championship. Clippers only 1 game above 500, and Marcus started out with a turnover the first time he caught the ball, and his feet were stuck in mud the entire game. And we had the same exact problem we've had since we took Terrence Mann out of the starting lineup, and that was that our point of attack defense offered no resistance. And Russell Westbrook, on every screen, non-existent. Basically trying to trail the screen and maybe get a block from behind, Patrick Beverley used to do that, but what you have to do is you have to actually run and stay attached and chase them down when you're behind them. Russell Westbrook, he'll get behind the guy with the ball that's coming over a screen and just give up on the play and just stand around and watch it develop. And now Zubac or whoever the big is in drop coverage has to play two guys at once. That's poor defense. But I'll tell you somebody who totally stepped up on both ends, and I've been very critical of him, and that was Paul George. When he was switching on the guys, he was stepping up and sitting down in a stance. His rotations were good. His help defense was good. He was getting the loose balls. It was the exact Paul George that we see and have become accustomed to seeing as a two-way star in this league. That is it. It's all in the mind with him, because he was being so much more aggressive, getting downhill, getting to the basket. He got to the line he got to the line 15 times, and he made 14 of them. Kawhi Leonard got to the line 13 times and made every single one. So between the two of them, they had 27 free throws made out of 28 attempts. That's incredible for your star duo, and that totally changes what they mean to the team and how they can affect a game when they're getting to the line that much. But the Clippers were down by 7 in the first quarter, not starting out well because Russ and Marcus Morris just had poor starts. And Zubac wasn't great either. Missed a bunny and was getting challenged at the rim a bit. But the bench guys, they really started to alleviate some of those worries. Eric Gordon, Mason Plumlee, and Nico Batum came in the game and immediately got it down to 1 before Terrence Mann checked in for Paul George. And the crazy part is the Clippers went with a 9-man rotation. So Robert Covington was out of there and Bones Highland was out of there. They went with 9, and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, one of them was always in. So they went back to the stagger. So again, constant change in these rotations. But the Clippers were up by 2 after 1. Second quarter, a little bit more of the same. Paul George had 17 points at halftime. Kawhi Leonard was also hooping, getting to the mid-range, hitting some threes, and also getting to the line. But the Clippers still could not stop the Grizzlies at the point of attack. And I also want to say it was the return of Luke Kennard, and it was crazy that he was open for so many threes, and he had a point to prove. He was knocking them down. Nuke hit 3 threes in the first half, and they were all wide open, which is crazy because if anybody knows how great of a shooter that guy is, it should be us. But Clippers went into the half up 6, and then what I experienced in the third quarter was just insanity. The Clippers allowed 51 points to this short-handed Grizzlies team in that quarter. It was an abomination. Paul George was the only one scoring. Kawhi Leonard did absolutely nothing in the third quarter. Nobody was playing defense really except for Paul George. That includes Kawhi, who wasn't offering much resistance on screens. Russell Westbrook was dying on every screen. And Ivica Zubac didn't play that much. Mason Plumlee was dropping too deep in the pick and roll. And Tyus Jones, Desmond Bane, these guys were making shots in the in-between game. And the second they stepped up, Jaren Jackson would be there on the board. So if the big man steps up, there needs to be a rotation there on his man. And that is just tough to defend. In the modern NBA, that's why teams try to switch. Because when you can't defend the pick and roll straight up, you're going to be giving up a good look every single time. And the Memphis Grizzlies were making the Clippers pay. And Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones were leading the charge. Tyus Jones was just pulling up for threes in transition like it was nothing. And the Clippers got careless with the ball. In the game, the Clippers turned the ball over 17 times, and Kawhi Leonard had 3. Paul George had 3. Russell Westbrook had 4. So between the 3 of them, 10 of the 17 turnovers for the Clippers. But every single one of the 9 players that played for the Clippers registered at least 1 turnover. So after the Sacramento game where we took better care of the ball, we went back to turning it over, and the Grizzlies scored 26 points off our turnovers. And in that quarter, when the Clippers were down by 16, I thought to myself, in that moment when I was sitting at the Staples Center, that this is it for Ty Lue. I think he's going to get fired in the morning. I really believed that for a second, that he was going to get fired in the morning, because it was inexcusable. We looked like a broken team, and our season just looked done right there. But finally, we saw a little bit of heart. We saw some life. Down 15 to enter the fourth quarter, they slowly chipped away at it, and it starts with Paul George, who was knocking down shots, getting to the basket, and I also thought Eric Gordon just had a really solid game as well. And you know who actually weirdly made some big shots to start the run? Marcus Morris. He only had 2 shots, but they were shots that actually helped kickstart the run. and the crowd. I cannot say enough about them. Totally propelled the team. And the adjustment, I have to give Ty Lue credit. It hasn't worked for us much this season, but he went small with Marcus Morris, Eric Gordon, Russ, Paul George, and Kawhi, and it worked. It worked. The switching, everything was better. The help defense was sharper. We were covering more ground, and they were getting a lot less open looks. The funny part is they still got some open looks, but when the crowd was on top of them and getting loud, it's amazing how you see professional basketball players go from making every shot to missing everything. Jaren Jackson was airballing, and you just knew. And this is the best feeling about being at games sometimes, when the crowd is on, when you're part of the crowd and you just know you're affecting the game. You know those guys are going to miss the second it leaves their hands. And you know your players are going to make it. It's an amazing feeling. And Kawhi Leonard and Paul George totally had one of their best games as a duo. It was a sight to see. Furious comeback. Paul George pulling up in transition. And what I really love is when the Clippers start to pick up the pace when they get those stops and try to make runs. And with small ball, it does help. So they don't have to worry about a big man coming down the court, lugging his big butt down it. They can kind of just push. And Paul George, when he hit that pull-up in transition to make it a 6-point game, I knew that there was a really strong chance we're going to win that game. And Kawhi Leonard, after being dormant in the third quarter, 15 points in the fourth, took over the game like a superstar does. We haven't seen that many of those Kawhi takeovers in wins in close games. And Kawhi talked about it after the game in the postgame. He said it's good to get those close wins we've been struggling with. And not only was his three ball on, but when he was in transition, dribbling with his left hand and drove to the basket and dunked, oh man, the crowd got so hyped. Clippers took the lead, and I knew we were going to ride the momentum home. And Russell Westbrook, despite not having a great game, made some big plays in terms of getting rebounds late in the game, and the and one he had was absolutely massive. And I also want to say, even though Luke Kennard made 2 more threes and cut it down to 2, the Paul George offensive rebound and putback, yes, he got away with an over-the-back foul, but the aggression to get that. You know, we talk about Paul George not getting calls all the time, but when he goes in and is not worrying about getting fouls, is playing with no fear, going and get that offensive rebound, then you know what? I'm happy to listen to Podcast P, podcast debut on Monday after a win. The Clippers win it 135 to 129 behind. 34 points from Kawhi Leonard, 15 in the fourth quarter, 42 from Paul George, in my opinion, his best game of the season. Can this be the turnaround for the Clippers? The thing is, it can be. It really can be, because even though it's a shorthanded team, sometimes all that matters is to get a win to get that mojo back. But you're not going to know unless they win 2 in a row. I'm not going to announce there's going to be a turnaround after one game. What matters is consistency, and that goes for Paul George especially and the rest of the guys. But coming up, going to talk about why a lot of people were saying the Clippers, a lot of fans I should say, that the Clippers should have lost this game and that they weren't happy the Clippers won because it could just paper over the cracks and prevent real change. Going to talk about what I mean by that coming up. Before I do that, we got to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best daily fantasy entry app around. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players and predict if they're going to score more than the Prize Picks projections. That means a various player will have a projection in a statistical category, and you've got to predict if they're going to go over, hit over, or under those. And it's not competing against other people. It's just you and the projections available. And PrizePicks offers projections on just about any sport. It's not just basketball. It can be college basketball. It can be soccer. It can be MLB, which is going to be coming up in a couple months. It could be NHL, whose season is nearing its close, just like basketball. And entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe and fast withdrawals, and currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. Tonight, on Monday night, I'm taking Damian Lillard's under on the points. I'm taking Jeremy Grant's over on the points, and I'm also taking Tyrese Halliburton's over on the points. And if you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right. So, yes, this could be a chance for the Clippers to turn their season around. I mean, 34-33, you got 15 games left. This is a sprint to the finish line. You're now only a game behind the Minnesota Timberwolves, I believe. Let's check the standings right now. So the Clippers are they're still in 8th place. They're actually in the same record basically as the Mavericks. The Mavericks have played 2 less games, so they're only 1 game above 500, just like the Clippers. The Timberwolves have played 1 less game than the Clippers and have lost 1 less time, but they have the same amount of wins at 34. And then the Golden State Warriors have played 2 less games than the Clippers and have 2 less losses. So the Clippers can still potentially get the 5 seed. They're 4 games back in the loss column to Phoenix, so that especially with them winning 3 games in a row since they got Kevin Durant, that's probably out of reach. And then Sacramento, 7 games back in the loss column, is just pretty cooked. So that top 3 seed dream that I think the Clippers are going to need to win a championship is pretty much dead, which is why I've concluded that they're not going to win the championship. But if you still believe that, well, that has to be the turnaround right there. If that went from Ty Lue could get fired in the morning, everyone's going to be destroying us, worst loss of the season, and we seem to keep having a new title for that. And now, maybe the start of a winning streak. I mean, who knows? But there were people saying that they're not happy. And I'm genuinely serious when I say there were some people I saw that were saying this is not a good win. Because now what's going to happen is, with Marcus Morris and Russell Westbrook being part of that comeback, and I'm not going to say the Clippers won in spite of them, because I don't believe that you can take the court and be a part of a run like that and just be awful. Because at the end of the day, there is this thing as a defensive liability. And Marcus Morris and Russell Westbrook at times have been that. But they held their own in the end in that game. Marcus Morris actually had some decent defensive possessions. And Russell Westbrook, the one thing you can say about him, even when he's lazy getting over screens and whatnot, he will fight for a loose ball and get a rebound. And Russell Westbrook in this game had 5 rebounds and 6 assists. The one thing I'll say is some of his passes are just phenomenal. That's the one thing I'll give him. And overall, he was +9 in the plus-minus. 9 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 turnovers. Was it his best game? No. Was it as good as the last game against Sacramento? No. Was it better than the Golden State game? Absolutely. Was it better than the Minnesota game? I'll take it, because even though he didn't have a better first half, sometimes less is more. He let Paul George and Kawhi do their thing. He let Paul George do his thing, and it was okay. Sometimes less is more. And one thing about Russ, he kept it efficient offensively. 4 for 9. The only thing I'll say is he can live without the threes. They were not necessary. 0 for 2 from deep. If you hadn't taken those threes, you're 4 for 7. I'll take that all day. But yeah, Russell Westbrook still 1 or 2 turnovers. I mean, the one thing about his turnovers are a lot of them aren't even on passes. He has like bad hands, and like it'll slip out of his hands or he'll lose the handle. It's pretty insane for an athlete like that. His hands are a little questionable, but his passes for the most part are still really good. I still think he may have gotten too many minutes. He played 34 minutes, which was the 3rd most of any Clipper. And Terrence Mann only played 18, and he was a +3 when he played. 7 points, 2 for 3, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought Terrence was much better in the first half. He was playing such good defense relative to everyone else, and he was getting to every loose ball and putting some downhill rim pressure on. But again, Terrence Mann, only 18 minutes since Russ has arrived. He hasn't been featured the same, and all of us don't like that. So that's another thing. With that win, does that mean that he still doesn't play Terrence much? Does that mean he still doesn't play Rocco? Still starts Senior? That's what everybody's worried about. Is he going to not make any changes because the Clippers got away with the win? And he sees it as, oh, Marcus hit 2 shots and was part of a comeback. Maybe I'm going to try to get his confidence back, as opposed to seeing the blatantly obvious with this team. And there's a real issue. We allowed 129 points to a Memphis Grizzlies team without 4 rotation players. We allowed 135 points. We could not stop the point of attack. We could not play defense. Nico Batum didn't even have that good of a game defensively. It was literally just Paul George and Terrence Mann to me that defended well. I mean, Mason Plumlee, yeah, he contests some shots, but I think he's a better rebounder than he is a defender on the interior. He doesn't offer much resistance. I don't know, and for somebody who actually gets up high off the ground and is a lob threat, as opposed to Zoo, who's not really that much of a lob threat, it's crazy that Zoo is such a better rim protector. Like, I don't know if he doesn't play his angles as well or his timing's not as good, but bigs and like Jaren Jackson and Xavier Tillman were just walking up to him and shooting floaters over him, and guards were just coming in there running into floaters when guys were dying on screens and not doing a good enough job getting over them. So it's two things. Obviously, Mason Plumlee needs to be a little bit better stepping up, but the guys that are guarding the ball need to do better at the point of attack, and that makes me question, do we just not have the personnel to guard the point of attack well? Because everyone seems to have this narrative that interior defense is so much more important. But I don't really agree with that. I think it may be a little more important, especially back in the day when it was more of an interior game. But in my opinion, perimeter defending and point of attack defending, fighting over screens, is everything in today's NBA. You need to have guys that are going to make it tough for people and not leave your bigs on an island. And so often, the Clipper guards and forwards leave Clipper bigs on an island. And Mason Plumlee, yes, he should have stepped up more, but he's having to do too much defensively. He is, and that's why you want to see Zoo in there. But when Ty Lue made the adjustment to go small, and it was a weird lineup. I mean, Russ, Eric Gordon, and Marcus Morris aren't your best defenders, but I got to give Eric Gordon a shout out. His defense was back to those first two games in this one. Much better on the ball, sitting down in a stance and actually trying to get over screens. Good help defense, using his size well. And I thought he was just really good for the second consecutive game. So how it's worked for EJ, first two games, fantastic. The 4 first games with Russ, god-awful. Last 2 games, really good again. 33 minutes for EJ. He played the 4th most minutes of any Clipper. He was a team-high plus 20 off the bench. He had 17 points on 6 for 7 shooting and 3 for 4 from deep. Some deep threes. So EJ absolutely doing what he needs to do, and we're going to need that with Norman Powell out. So he needs to hopefully continue that. His role is very clear now. He's the 6th man at this moment in time, just like he was in Houston in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 20. As for the others, I talked about Terrence Mann. Mason Plumlee, his stat line was good though. I mean, in just 21 minutes of play, 15 points, 9 rebounds. He was plus 3, 7 for 8 from the field. So he did a good job finishing. He does his job for a backup. It's fantastic. But as a starter, I definitely prefer Zoo. Mason's better, moving his feet on the perimeter, but he's still not a switch 1 through 5 big. If it's a Zubats, really good rim protection. 2 turnovers, by the way, for Mason Plumlee, who's definitely more turnover prone than Zoo. But those are the 4 bench players. As for Marcus Morris, he had 5 points on 2 for 6 shooting. Kawhi Leonard, 34 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists on 9 for 20 shooting. So 45% overall. 3 for 7 from deep and 13 for 13 from the line. The guy just took over the game. You love to see it. He was aggressive. It just felt like shots just started falling when it counted, and it reminded me of the playoffs in ways. And Paul George, 42 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 12 for 23 shooting, 4 for 9 from deep, 14 for 15 from the line, 3 turnovers. You'd like to see him get like 1 less, but 3 or less is fine with me when he's playing like that. It was just an unbelievable performance from P. And for the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George duo, to have 21 rebounds combined is amazing. It's exactly what you want to see from your guys. But coming up, going to be closing out, talking about the Marcus Morris situation and looking ahead at the next couple of games and seeing if the Clippers can build a streak, and also touching on Robert Covington and his DNP. Going to be talking about that coming up. But before we do that, got to talk about Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier, get some more protein in me regularly. And to do that, Built Bar is absolutely a help. And the thing about Built Bar is they're not just your normal protein bars. They're like candy bars with a chewy interior that reminds me of Rolos. That kind of thing. It really just feels like you're eating a candy bar, and that's partially because they're 100% covered in real chocolate, so you know they're going to taste good. And they come in unbelievable flavors like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and churro. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste just like candy bars, while also maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your bars at Built.com, but now you can go to Walmart or your local Sam's Club and get boxes. If you go to Sam's Club, you can get a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. All right. The Clippers turning the ball over way too much, but ultimately outscore the Grizzlies 38-17 to beat them in a very short-handed situation. And as far as Memphis goes, Ja Morant is now going to be away from the team indefinitely, according to the Grizzlies and, sources around the league. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them going forward and if teams want to play them in the playoffs with all this stuff going on. And you could easily see Sacramento become a 2 seed. And if that's the case, then the Clippers need to find a way to go 0-6 on this and try to finesse their way into the 6th seed, because even though that's going to be 2 series on the road, Memphis and Sacramento may be the best way the Clippers can get to the conference finals, so they can let Dallas and Phoenix battle each other out and then play Denver in the next round. So that's a potential path, but right now the Clippers can't focus on that. They just got to focus on winning one game at a time, because it doesn't matter who they play in the playoffs if they're not the best versions of themselves. But I will say this. It's really nice for the Clippers to get that monkey off their back. Now Russell Westbrook has a win as a Clipper. And it wasn't pretty, but he got the job done. That's all that matters. I don't care what kind of stats he puts up. As long as the Clippers win, that's what matters to me. He can put up 9 points and 5 assists as opposed to 27 and 10 like he did the last game. But if he wins the game and doesn't make any big mistakes closing, that's what matters more. And he didn't. He didn't make any big mistakes closing, and neither did Paul George. If anything, Paul George made big plays. Russell Westbrook got a big and one. They got rebounds. Kawhi was great. You finally saw the Clippers close out a game well. So that's a great sign, but part of it's that home crowd, and they're not going to always have that. They're not going to always have that kind of momentum. So they need to show consistency. It doesn't matter what they do in one game. It matters what they do in the next game and the game after that. So the next game on Wednesday against Toronto. Now, Toronto's been playing better since Jakob Poeltl's been inserted into the starting lineup, because now they have a real big man. They've been behind the curve all season long, had a lot of talks about trades at the deadline, who's going in, who's going out. They ended up not being sellers. They kept their team together, and Pascal Siakam's been playing amazing basketball all season. Pretty sure he didn't even make the All-Star team, which was egregious. But he's been playing at an all-star level all season, and the Toronto Raptors are only 1 game below 500 now. After all that, they stand in the 9th spot in the Eastern Conference, so it should be a good game. And the Raptors always bring like 15 to 20% Canadians in the stadium against the Clippers, so it will not be an easy game. But the Clippers absolutely should win. They have the best player on the court, and they have arguably the second best player on the court in Paul George. Now, Siakam, in my opinion, has probably had a better year. He's carried more weight, but the Clippers have 2 of the best 3 players on the court and far more depth. They absolutely should get a win, make it 2 in a row, but we'll see. The Raptors are playing good basketball, and you can't get any guaranteed wins in the NBA, especially with the way the Clippers have been defending. So moral of the story, it means nothing, and it's not a turnaround unless the Clippers can win 2 in a row. But I am afraid that, Ty Lue now goes, all right, I'm going to start Marcus again. He played decently in the second half, and it's no Terrence Mann, no Robert Covington, and the same cycle continues to repeat. That's my fear. But overall, it's a win, and I'm really happy about it. A video of the game will be on my channel. Check it out. The atmosphere was fantastic. Second half was just really great. Felt like a big regular season game. It was a sellout. But yeah. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and subscribe to Locked On Clippers and let me know. Do you think it could be a turnaround, or are you part of the crowd that's disappointed that we won because you think it just papers over the cracks? Let me know in the pinned comment. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers your first listen today. Now make your second listen Locked On Game to Game. Or should I say Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers, back to winning ways. 1 game over 500 overall and at home. Let's make it 2 over 500 overall and at home on Wednesday. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.